John Wooden was a man of action.
John Wooden was patient.
Coach Wooden was a mentor.
Coach Wooden was a principle-centered man.
Coach Wooden was a pioneer.
Coach Wooden was a teacher. Coach Wooden was compassionate.
Coach Wooden was my father. He was Dad, and I loved him.
John Wooden was a saint.
He was a special man that touched so many people's lives.
John Wooden is and always will be an inspiration to all of us. The Wooden Awards and the Wooden Fellows are living examples of what makes his leadership principles eternal.
We have a lot of people coming through the program from the military, and a few have become Wooden Fellows. With you, Ryan, we were particularly drawn to your human-focused leadership skills as a Navy captain.
First and foremost, I want to thank you for this incredible honor. And I appreciate you highlighting the human-focused side of leadership. That's very important for the military culture. There are times in the military where the mission is number one. During combat operations or a search and rescue flight, but your people can't maintain a full court press all the time. The only way that we can really maintain that high level of operational readiness is through great investments in our teammates. I think it's similar to how Coach Wooden focused on not just developing the best players, but really the best humans.
100%. So what motivated you to take this approach?
When I was a commanding officer, my sailors had just gotten back from back-to-back deployments. Morale was low and the personal stresses were really high. So in that moment, I thought it was incredibly important to make sure that everybody knew that they mattered and their contributions to our mission mattered. I firmly believe that people can accomplish great things if they feel connected to the work and valued. So I worked with my team on a plan to balance our mission requirements and provide some flexibility for people to recoup some time with their family and friends. I want people to be able to go to graduation ceremonies or their wife's ultrasound, see their kid get an award at school. I think some time off to deal with some normal life things puts people in a position where they work that much harder when they return to work.
I assume that you had some challenges getting something like this up through the ranks.
I did, and I'll admit I was not always as successful as I had hoped to be. It's really hard to change culture and institutional mindsets, and getting buy-in, it takes time and consistency. In the end, the investments we made led to the squadron being highly successful long after I had transferred. This wasn't a cure-all. Long-term mental health, depression, and suicide is a serious problem facing the military community. At my squadron, we had several sailors that expressed suicide ideations. I felt heavy empathy, and as a leader, an obligation to do everything I could for those individuals. I had a young petty officer that worked for me, and his wife suffered from mental illness. And despite all the resources and support we tried to give the family, she took her life a few weeks after the birth of their premature child. That young sailor was new to the area and did not have an extended network. So that night I stayed with him at his apartment, watched his infant son so that he could start to process his loss. I then worked with the Navy to make sure that we could get him reassigned to a command in Florida where he could be close to family and keep his career on track. And the last time I checked in on him, he was doing great and his son was healthy and doing well. One thing I'll always value is our military's commitment to one another. There is nothing we won't do for one another in times of need.
I think staying on top of mental health is another way the military stays on the cutting edge.
Our people are more important, more valuable than aircraft, weapon systems, even a $5 billion aircraft carrier like the one behind us. As leaders, we have to be fully committed to their well-being.
This is the wisdom, Ryan, that puts your name next to John Wooden's. Perfectly. Juhie, let's start with your leadership. I hear you're president of the Anderson Student Association, or the head of the student body, so they say.
It's been incredible working with such a group of talented and intelligent individuals, and I've learned a lot about how to work with a group, but also how to remain firm on decisions that I'm making.
You get close to people, and sometimes you have to oppose them.
I look at the humanity of it all. We're not cogs in a machine, and if we ever disagree or have a bad day, it's never a reason for us to stop working together or treat each other with respect, ever. I think of my last role at Healthline Media, which was an objective information resource about health and wellness. I started the team in the Influencer Marketing Initiative, where we reached out to creators to share their stories and give them a platform to share their voices. I especially think of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, where I worked with creators who were on the hook to deliver social media content for us while living with their condition. They'd be in and out of the hospital. At that point, I realized that it didn't matter as much what we were asking them to deliver. I just wanted to make sure they were okay. I would send them flowers, get on calls with them, and maybe even cry with them sometimes. It's a view of leadership I never thought I would take, but just making sure that people are okay, that's it.
That's empowerment at its best.
Another time was during Pride Month, where we were running a campaign about mental health awareness and suicide prevention with the Trevor Project. This was a time that's usually very celebratory, but we had to take a step back and look at the people who were not proud to be who they were. There were some people who mentioned to us that they considered taking their life. Others were seeking gender-affirming care during the pandemic and were struggling to receive it. We were in a position to provide resources while building a community at the same time. Not everyone was following Healthline for the purpose of this Pride campaign, and we got hateful comments. But I, as a leader, knew that I had to protect the creators I was working with and reclaim the narrative. Some people said that they chose not to take their life that day because of the content that we created. Others said they knew how to come out to their families because of our resources.
Juhie, I know that you are a good person and transformative, and you deserve the pride we all have in you.
Thank you so much for this honor.
You're welcome.
Tiffany, you are one of the most active students at Anderson. I have to ask you, what drives you?
My parents actually moved from Taiwan to America when they were very young, and they gave up a lot for me and my brother so that we could have a happy life here. Their sacrifice is actually what drives me to make that same impact for others. Growing up, I thought it was them pushing me so that I can go to a good college, but now I realize it's not hard work for hard work's sake. It's hard work so that I can make that impact for others, and that's why I'm still doing it.
Well, I know FTMBA Council presidents have no choice. Impact is the job. There's 700 FTMBA students today?
There are 700 FTMBAs in the program. What I find important is marrying the competitive nature to be better, the hard work, but also helping people. And that's why I'm part of FTMBA Council. That's why I'm part of extracurricular projects at Salesforce to help others. And I'm also a fact coach, so I help other FTMBAs pivot into new careers. To me, the culture of sharing success at Anderson is perfect. Anything I can help others do to reach their goal, whether it's interview preparation, presentation help, or anything at Salesforce, it's a no-brainer to pass that along.
I did my research on you. You have been helping people in your spare time since high school.
This is true. What started as a personal interest when I was growing up, playing the violin, I became really good at it, and I ended up joining a lot of prestigious youth orchestras. But I wanted to extend my talent beyond just that. I wanted to make an impact. So I found an opportunity to teach children on the autism spectrum how to play the violin and the piano. What started as an opportunity through a high school club, what I thought was a once or twice kind of thing, turned into many students over many years and has been a very fulfilling part of my journey.
I am sure the learning wasn't a one-way street.
No, not at all. The key is patience and learning to see the world from a different perspective. This was my first time doing this, and there was no guidance on how to teach children on the autism spectrum or with ADHD. You have to show them that they're doing a good job. Some of them are very gifted, and you have to show them how to use it. So when you play into their reactions, instead of being didactic, you see the world how they see the world, and it's a very beautiful thing.
Coach Wooden knew that the process of your work is the product of your work. You know this, Tiffany, and I believe that your leadership throughout your career will be by example.
That means so much. Thank you, Al.
I've been the director of the UCLA LGBTQ Campus Resource Center since 2018. I also run the UCLA Volunteer Center, and I also run my own consultancy. It's a lot, but it's hugely rewarding and also challenging.
As someone who's transgender, I am sure you're accustomed to challenges.
It's one of the reasons I really took to Coach Wooden's philosophy on leadership. He really saw adversity as an asset, and it's something that I think is really key to leadership myself. And yes, I'm a man of transgender experience. I also hold a lot of other identities. I've always identified as a feminist, I'm a spiritual person, I'm also an Italian American, and you know, the way these things intersect also inform and make up how I experience the world.
I imagine that encouraging these kinds of conversations is part of your work here at UCLA.
It is, among a lot of other things. I work to ensure our centers meet the goals of the university and are serving the communities that we represent. I co-lead the UCLA Gender Recognition and Implementation Committee. We work to ensure the university comes into compliance with state law, but also the spirit of the law. And a lot of people don't realize that I'm transgender. But the great thing about being at UCLA is that people really see this as an asset.
It sounds like you found where you belong, but I know it probably hasn't always been that way.
It certainly hasn't always been easy. Like many transgender people, I've experienced a lot of forms of discrimination. Before I transitioned back in New York, I used to take the monthly commuter rail into the city for work. And when you buy a pass at that time, you had to indicate the sex marker that was listed on your state ID, which at that time meant that it was female. And every day, twice a day, I was harassed by the ticket taker, insulting me, asking me questions loudly, expecting that the pass wasn't my own, even after I produced my license. And in some of my first job interviews, people were laughing at me, the hiring staff, because of the way that I was dressed. These are just some of my experiences, but transgender people live at the intersections of real harassment and violence every day.
I am so sorry that happened. And how do you carry that with you? These experiences never ever really leave you.
I try to use these experiences for good, to educate other people. Not everybody comes into UCLA understanding or accepting LGBTQ communities. I want LGBTQ people to be able to just exist without fear of violence, discrimination, or harassment. I'm really lucky because I come from a family who loves me unconditionally. Many LGBTQ people have family members that want to support them, but they don't know how to support us. And we support them as well.
Andy, your personal and professional experiences are a triumph. Thank you for sharing your story with me.